What do you mean she gutted the house? My voice echoed through my hotel room in Tokyo as I gripped my phone tighter. My neighbor Susan's voice crackled with concern on the other end. Amanda, you need to come home. Your sister-in-law, she's torn everything out. The original woodwork, the stained glass, everything. I felt my knees buckle as I sank onto the bed. The century-old Victorian house that had been in my family for 4 generations wasn't just a building. It was our legacy, filled with irreplaceable craftsmanship and memories. And now Diane, my brother's wife of barely 2 years, had taken it upon herself to modernize it while I was away on a 3-month teaching exchange. I tried to stop her, Susan continued, her voice trembling. But she had some company document showing she had authority to make changes. She said you'd be thrilled with the surprise. Surprise. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. The only reason Diane had access to the house was because I'd allowed her to use it for her photography business while I was away. My brother James had insisted she was responsible, that she just needed a nice space for her studio. It'll give her something to focus on, he'd said. You know how she's been struggling since losing her job. I ended the call with Susan and immediately dialed James. It went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. He was probably at another medical conference, completely unaware of what his wife was doing to my home. Our home. The house our great-grandfather had built with his own hands in 1924. Before I could try another number, my phone buzzed with a text from Diane herself. Attached was a photo of what used to be my living room. The hand-carved mahogany fireplace mantel was gone, replaced by some sleek modern monstrosity. The original hardwood floors were covered in gray laminate, and the walls, the beautiful textured wallpaper our grandmother had carefully selected, were now a stark white. Surprise, her message read, bringing this old place into the 21st century. Just wait until you see what I'm doing with the staircase. Those spindles were so dated. My hands shook as I typed back, Diane, stop what you're doing immediately. You had no authority to make these changes. 3 dots appeared then. Don't be so dramatic. I have paperwork saying I can use the house, and it desperately needed updating. I'm doing you a favor. The contractor says we're adding at least 100 to the value. The contractor. Those 2 words sent a chill down my spine. I quickly called the city's building department, my heart racing as I waited on hold. After what felt like eternity, a woman named Margaret answered. Has anyone pulled permits for work at 1847 Maple Street? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The sound of typing filled the line. No permits on file for that address this year, Margaret replied. Should there be? I explained the situation, my words tumbling out faster as anger and fear competed in my chest. Margaret's sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. Ma'am, if they're doing structural work without permits, especially on a house that age, you need to get an inspector out there immediately. We can have someone there within the hour. I authorized the emergency inspection, then called Susan back. Can you meet the inspector? I'm booking the next flight home, but it'll take me at least 24 hours to get there. Of course, Susan agreed. And Amanda, there's something else you should know. I've seen them carrying things out. Furniture, artwork, those old trunks from the attic. The trunks. My heart stopped. Those contained generations of family photos, documents, my parents' letters, my great-grandfather's journals detailing the house's construction. Where are they taking everything? There's a storage pod in the driveway. Diane said she's decluttering for you. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, Michael, who'd handled my parents' estate. As I explained the situation, his usual calm demeanor gave way to concern. The document giving her access to use the house as a studio wouldn't cover renovations, he'd assured me. I'm pulling it up now. Yes, it specifically states no structural or permanent changes without written consent of the owner. Start documenting everything. Photos, texts, emails. I'll file for an emergency injunction. Just then, another text from Diane arrived. This time it was a video showing her walking through my grandmother's formal dining room. The built-in china cabinets were gone, leaving gaping holes in the walls. The coffered ceiling had been ripped out, exposing pipes and wiring. So much brighter now. Her voice chirped in the video. Those old cabinets were such a waste of space. Wait until you see what we're putting in instead. I'm thinking a super modern wet bar. I forwarded the video to Michael, then booked the first available flight home. As I threw clothes into my suitcase, my phone buzzed with a call from Susan. "The inspector just left," she said, her voice tight. "Amanda, it's bad. Really bad. They've removed load-bearing walls without proper support. The electrical work isn't up to code," he said. "He said the house isn't even safe to occupy right now." I sat down hard on the hotel room floor, my vision blurring with tears of rage. "Is Diane there? What did she say?" "She left when she saw the inspector coming, but she was smiling, Amanda, like she knew exactly what she was doing. And suddenly, I did too. This wasn't about modernizing the house or adding value. This was calculated destruction. Diane had always been jealous of my family's history, of the house that represented everything her own family didn't have. She wasn't trying to improve it, she was trying to erase it. But as I sat there, something else occurred to me, something that made me smile for the first time since this nightmare began. Diane might have thought she had authority over the house, but she didn't know about the historic preservation covenant my parents had placed on the property before they died. Any unauthorized changes wouldn't just be expensive to fix, they'd be criminal. I pulled up my email and forwarded the inspector's report to Michael, copying the Historic Preservation Society. Then I texted Diane back. "Thanks for documenting everything so thoroughly. The authorities will find it very helpful." Her response was immediate. "What authorities? I'm improving your property. You should be grateful." I didn't reply. Instead, I gathered my things and headed for the airport. In 24 hours, I'd be home. And Diane was about to learn that some surprises work both ways. The first thing I noticed when my taxi pulled up to the house was the dumpster. My heart sank as I saw pieces of hand-carved woodwork and vintage fixtures piled inside like common trash. The second thing I noticed was Diane, standing on my porch with her hands on her hips, looking more annoyed than concerned. "Finally, I've been trying to reach James to tell him how unreasonable you're being," she called out as I approached. "These renovations are half finished and now there's some ridiculous stop work order posted everywhere." I walked past her without a word, my boots crunching on demolition debris that littered what used to be my carefully maintained garden path. The front door was propped open, allowing me my first real-life view of the devastation. The grand entryway, once a showcase of craftsman woodwork, had been stripped bare. The smell of fresh paint and sawdust couldn't mask the underlying scent of mold, likely from exposed walls left unprotected during recent rains. "The contractor says all this red tape is adding thousands to the budget," Diane continued, following me inside. "You'll need to transfer more money to cover the delays." I turned to face her, keeping my voice steady. "Where are the trunks from the attic?" "Oh, those old things," she waved dismissively. "They're in storage. This house had way too much cluttered history. I'm giving it a clean slate." "And the stained glass windows?" I asked, noticing the gaping holes where the century-old windows had once filtered sunlight into rainbow patterns across the floor. "Being replaced with energy-efficient ones." "Really, Amanda? You should be thanking me. This place was a museum. Now it can be a real home." Before I could respond, heavy footsteps approached from the back of the house. A man in a suit appeared, holding a clipboard and wearing an expression that suggested he'd seen a crime scene. "Ms. Harrison," he extended his hand. "I'm David Chen from the Historic Preservation Society. We need to discuss the extent of unauthorized modifications to this property." Diane's smug smile faltered slightly. "I have paperwork giving me authority to use the space as a photography studio," I interrupted, pulling out my phone and bringing up the original agreement. "Nothing more." Mr. Chen nodded, consulting his clipboard. "According to our records, this property was placed under a historic preservation covenant in 2018. Any structural or aesthetic modifications require prior approval from our board. What I'm seeing here," he gestured to the gutted walls, "constitutes multiple violations of that covenant." "That's ridiculous," Diane protested. "It's just a house, not some national monument." "Actually," Mr. Chen continued, "it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places specifically for its exceptional architectural details, many of which appear to have been removed or destroyed." I watched as the color drained from Diane's face. But James said. "James doesn't own this house," I said quietly. "I do, and I never authorized any of this." Just then, Susan appeared in the doorway, holding a tablet. Amanda, I have the security footage you asked for. I'd installed cameras after our parents died, wanting to keep an eye on the property during my frequent work trips. Diane had known about the outdoor cameras, but not the ones inside. We gathered around the tablet, watching footage of Diane directing workers to remove fixtures and furniture, gleefully pointing out elements to be destroyed. But it was the audio that proved most damning. Just tear it all out. Diane's voice rang clearly through the tablet's speakers. The more we demolish, the less chance she'll be able to restore it. Then she'll have to sell, and we can finally get rid of this monument to her perfect family history. Mr. Chen's pen scratched rapidly across his clipboard. Diane's face had gone from pale to ashen. I was just trying to help, she stammered. James said, "Where is my brother, by the way?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "He's been at a conference in Chicago all month," she muttered. "He doesn't know about the renovations." I wanted it to be a surprise for everyone. "Oh, it's definitely been surprising," I agreed, just as my phone buzzed with a text from Michael, my lawyer. He'd filed the emergency injunction and had some interesting findings about the contractor Diane had hired, or rather, hadn't hired. "Mr. Chen," I turned to the preservation officer, "could you explain to my sister-in-law exactly what penalties apply for willful destruction of a protected historic property?" He adjusted his glasses. "The fines start at $100,000 per violation, and I'm counting at least 12 major violations so far. Additionally, all elements must be restored to their original condition using period-appropriate materials and craftsmen approved by our board." Diane's knees seemed to buckle, and she grabbed the remnants of the stair railing for support. But that's impossible. You can't expect." "Actually, I can and do," I cut in. "You're going to tell me exactly where every piece of my family's history is stored. Then you're going to leave. My lawyer will be in touch about the restoration costs." "You can't prove I meant to cause damage." She tried one last time. "It was just renovation." Susan tapped the tablet, where Diane's own words about deliberately destroying the house played again. "I think this proves intent pretty clearly." Diane's face crumpled, tears finally replacing her smugness. "Fine. The storage pod company is called Safekeep, unit number 247. But I was doing this for James. He always complained about how this house made him feel inferior, how you got everything just because you were older." "Get out," I said quietly, "and Diane, when you see James, tell him to check his voicemail. The Historic Preservation Society has some questions about his role in all this." After she fled, Mr. Chen spent another hour documenting the damage. While he worked, Susan helped me locate the storage facility and arrange for immediate retrieval of our family's belongings. By evening, the trunks were back home, their contents miraculously intact. Sitting on the floor of what used to be our living room, surrounded by the rescued pieces of my family's history, I opened my great-grandfather's journal. A yellow photograph fell out, showing the house on the day it was completed, my ancestors standing proudly on the same porch where Diane had stood hours earlier. "We'll restore it," Susan said softly, sitting beside me. "Every detail." I nodded, running my fingers over my great-grandfather's handwriting. Diane had tried to erase my family's history, but she failed. And now, thanks to her own actions, she'd be the one paying to preserve it. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Finally. "We need to talk," it read. "Yes," I typed back, "we certainly do." 3 months after Diane's disastrous renovation, I stood in the restored entryway of my family home, watching a skilled craftsman carefully reinstall the original stained glass windows. Each piece had been meticulously cleaned and repaired, the lead work restored to its former glory. Sunlight once again painted rainbow patterns across the hardwood floors, the real ones, not Diane's gray laminate. The restoration hadn't been cheap, but I hadn't paid a dime. The Historic Preservation Covenant had proven to be ironclad, and the court had ordered Diane to cover all costs. When she claimed she couldn't afford it, her parents stepped forward, mortified by their daughter's actions and eager to avoid public scandal. James had finally shown up the day after my confrontation with Diane, full of excuses and misplaced anger. "You're ruining her life," he shouted, "making her parents go into debt over a few cosmetic changes." I'd simply led him through the house, showing him exactly what his wife had done. His medical training kicked in when he saw the exposed electrical wiring to moldy walls, the compromised support structures. Someone could have died, he'd whispered, finally understanding the magnitude of Diane's actions. If there had been a fire, or if the ceiling had collapsed. Still think they were just cosmetic changes? I'd ask quietly. The fight seemed to drain out of him then. I knew she was jealous of the house, of our family history. She'd make these little comments about how unfair it was that you inherited everything just because you were older. But I never thought that she tried to destroy it. He'd slumped against the wall, looking suddenly older. I should have seen it. The way she'd get angry whenever you hosted family gatherings here. How she'd make snide remarks about living in the past. I wanted to believe she'd grow to love this place like we did. Now, watching the house slowly return to its former glory, I thought about family and legacy, about the difference between preserving history and living in the past. Each restored element told a story. The dining room's coffered ceiling that our great-grandfather had carved by hand, the window seats where generations of children had read books on rainy days, the broad porch where our parents had taught us to dance. Susan appeared beside me, holding 2 cups of coffee. The restoration company found something interesting in the walls, she said, handing me a cup. They want you to come see. I followed her upstairs to what had been my parents' bedroom. A craftsman stood on a ladder, carefully examining the exposed wall where Diane's workers had torn out the original wainscoting. Look here, he pointed to a small metal box embedded in the wall. It was hidden behind the panels. Carefully he extracted the box and handed it to me. It was old, its surface dulled with age, but the latch still worked. Inside, I found a stack of letters, their paper brittle with time, and a small leather-bound book. The book was a diary, dated 1924, the year the house was built. It belonged to my great-grandmother, Elizabeth. As I gently turned the pages, her words painted a picture of that first year in the new house, her hopes for the generations that would follow. A house is more than walls and windows, she'd written. It's a vessel for dreams, a keeper of memories, a shelter for the future. May all who live here understand that they are part of something larger than themselves. James arrived as I was reading, his expression hesitant. We hadn't spoken much since his confrontation with Diane, who had moved back to her parents' house pending their divorce. The windows look right again, he said softly, glancing around. I forgot how beautiful the light was. I handed him the diary, great-grandmother Elizabeth's words. You should read them. He took it carefully, his doctor's hands gentle with the fragile pages. As he read, I saw tears form in his eyes. I forgot, he whispered. I let Diane make me forget what this place really means. It's not just your house, Amanda. It's our heritage. It's still your home too, I said. Whenever you need it. He looked up, surprised. Even after everything? Family is family, I replied. That's what this house has always been about. The craftsman on the ladder cleared his throat. Ma'am, we found something else. Looks like old photographs tucked between the floor joists. As we carefully extracted the photos, faces from the past emerged. Our ancestors building this house, celebrating holidays, marking milestones. Each image was a thread in the tapestry of our family story, preserved within these very walls. Diane never understood, James said, holding a photo of our great-grandparents standing proudly on the front steps. She saw the past as a burden to escape. But it's really a foundation to build upon, isn't it? I nodded, thinking of Elizabeth's words about being part of something larger than ourselves. Diane had tried to erase our history, but she only succeeded in revealing its strength. Every attempt to destroy this house had only made its true value clearer. The afternoon light streamed through the restored windows, casting those familiar rainbow patterns across the floor. Outside, I could hear the quiet work of craftsmen continuing the restoration, each repair a rebuke to those who thought history could be so easily discarded. Welcome home, James, I said softly. He smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. It's good to be home. Together, we stood in the house our ancestors built, surrounded by the echoes of their dreams and the promise of futures yet to come. Some things I realized were built to endure, not just in wood and glass, but in the stories we choose to preserve and a legacy we choose to protect.